Now, if you're new to triathlon, or indeed an old hand, you could well be doing most of your riding out on the roads on a road bike like one of these, but be interested in the notion of a triathlon or time trial specific bike. However, the thought of splashing out all that cash on an extra bike simply to go a little bit faster seems, well, a little bit extravagant, doesn't it? But fear not, because for a fraction of that cost and a good deal of the benefits of one of those triathlon or TT bikes, with a set of these Aero clip-on bars, you too could be getting comfortable and Aero out on your road bike. So today I'm going to talk through how to install a set of these clip-on Aero bars onto your road bike so you can get faster out on the roads. So first things first, you've decided to add these clip-on bars onto your handlebars, but you need to figure out if those handlebars are compatible for the clip-ons. So what you need to do is have a look at your own handlebar and see if you've got space either side of the stem. Ideally, you need about 2 fingers width or 2 to 3 centimeters either side of your stem to allow those Aero clip-on bars to be clamped on. Do be mindful because a lot of handlebars taper off quite soon either side of that stem. As you can see here, these handlebars are a lot narrower once you get past that 2 to 3 centimeters. So you need to just check and make sure that there is the space for those clip-on bars. Or alternatively, you can have a look at your handlebars because they often have a handy guideline, like these spare ones I have here show just there that past that point it's not safe to add your clip-ons. And on that note of clamping Aero bars onto your handlebars, if your bike has carbon handlebars, just be careful because carbon has a tendency not to like to be clamped, and often these types of handlebars actually need to be reinforced to cope with Aero bars being clamped onto them. So the best thing to do is to check with the manufacturer of the handlebar in the first instance, or even just pop down to your local bike shop and ask them, can I add clip-on bars onto these handlebars? So once we've figured out what our own bike and handlebar setup requires, it's time for us to be able to start clipping on our Aero bars onto the handlebar. Now for this, I've opted for a 2-piece extension setup as opposed to 1-piece alternatives, just because I think they offer more adjustability and comfort, reach, and so on. But I will touch a little bit more on that later in the video. And as you can see, I've already started with clipping one of my extensions onto the handlebar just because the process is a little bit fiddly. And in terms of that process, what we need to do is firstly unbolt the clamp from the back of the extension, take that underneath the handlebar, pop the rest of the extension on top, and then tighten those bolts up, but not too tight because you want to be able to have some movement in the clip-on once it's on the handlebar so that you've got some maneuverability once you're trying to dial in that position. Now it is worth noting that since we're clamping metal onto metal, it's worth adding a couple layers of electrical tape onto your handlebars, just so that in the future, if you want to take those clip-on bars back off, you don't want any scratches left on your handlebars. So as you can see, I've got my second extension added onto the handlebars now, but I want to touch on that adjustability that I did just talk about a bit before, because these extensions have a ton of adjustability, and that is because of a single bolt that just sits here under the armrest, and if I undo that, suddenly I've got rotation and I've got extra length backwards and forwards too, which just adds a whole spectrum of extra adjustability to these clip-on bars. And as a final note, you've actually got a really handy guideline, which you can see here on the Aero extension, which just means you can be really specific to the millimeter even with your reach. So once we've got the general position set up, the next stage to get comfortable and really dial in this position with the clip-on bars is to set up the indoor trainer like I've done here. Now if you remember, I didn't tighten up the bolts fully on these clip-ons, and that was for a reason, so that once I'm on the bike just now, I can just slowly tilt them up or push them down to try and figure out the right position that I want them to be sitting in. And once I'm happy with that, I can tighten them up. Now as a rough rule of thumb for this positioning, I was always told to try and have my upper arms roughly tracking the fork leg of the bike, and my forearms would be parallel to the floor. And in terms of getting this position set up, it's really good if you've got a friend who can help you with this, taking a photo or ideally a little video so you can have a look and really get it set up properly. Now the armrests, or arm pads as they're sometimes called, can be moved around a lot on these clip-on bars too. Sometimes you might find that, say, your knees are catching on them when you're cycling, so you can move them forwards, or in fact also if there's too much reach they can be pulled back too. All you have to do is simply pull away the Velcro pad, and then that reveals the bolts that are underneath. Now, I personally, when I'm setting up clip-on bars, like to leave them in what I call a neutral position, which is usually having the bolt sitting in the middle of the options, as you can see here. There's also usually a width adjustment factor to clip-on bars too, which is just underneath in here on the extension, and I like to have them sitting middle as well. So that just keeps everything quite neutral. If of course you feel that you want to be more stretched out, you can push the pads forward, and similarly if you feel you are too stretched out, then you just pull them back as well. So the whole point of us adding these clip-on extensions is to try and be more aerodynamic. And the common school of thought is the lower the better when trying to achieve that. But of course, our positions are all a little bit different, and we might not all want to have the absolute lowest position that comes with these clip-ons. So there is the possibility with a lot of them to change the height that your armrest sits at, and that's by adding in these sorts of stacked razors. Now, as I've got them sitting at the moment, this armrest is as low down to the handlebar as it can be, but if I added in this block, which is 30 mils, that would just sit in there, raise the armrest up, and that would take it to an intermediate height, and I could of course add in an even higher razor to bring that up yet further as well. Right, so now that I've got my position nice and dialed in with these new clip-on bars added to the bike, there's just a couple other factors worth paying attention to for improving the overall position. And the first of those is the saddle, because when we're in Aero bars and we're down on that position in the bike, our hip angle is naturally altered relative to the bottom bracket. So to counter this, we can move the saddle forward a little bit, and that just helps with our general position when we're down in the Aero bars. And it is worth noting, and I certainly feel, that whenever I am in that position, I generally find myself shunting forward on the saddle anyway. Now, the other point I was going to talk about is the aerodynamics that we're trying to improve when we're on the bike, and the lower is generally the better. So if we can bring our handlebar down just a little bit, then that could help our position quite a lot. So it's worth having a look at your stem height and seeing if there's any spacers that sit below your stem. And now I know this is a more aerodynamic looking frame set, so I'd actually just have to take these spacers away to drop the stem. But on a regular road bike, you could take those spacers away and then pop them above the stem and start playing around with your position to see how it feels when you're out on the road. Right then, I am pretty happy with this setup that these extensions have added to my road bike. I'm more comfy, I'm most certainly more aerodynamic than I was beforehand. And the beauty of it is they have essentially transformed this road bike into something pretty similar to a TT equivalent. And as I said at the outset, for a fraction of the cost of a whole new bike. If you too have opted for changing your road bike with some sort of setup like this, please drop those in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that thumb up button, find the globe on screen to get all the other videos on our channel. And if you want to see another video about doing things at a fraction of the cost that Mark did about a DIY home disc wheel, you can find that there.